Hey guys, tonight we slip quietly through the half-open gates of Kashgar, that legendary market outpost where every camel seems to speak 5 languages and every merchant swears a pinch of his saffron can heal heartbreak though. Between us, most of them can't even fix a paper cut. You arrive, lantern in hand, yawning as the sky shifts from midnight plum to watered-down apricot jam. We'll drift slowly enough to soothe your pulse, yet stay curious enough to keep one eye half open like a lazy cat deciding whether the red laser dot is really worth the effort. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And while you're at it, drop a comment telling me where in the world you're watching from and what time it is right now. Our little caravan loves collecting time zones. Now, dim the lights. Maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum. And let's ease into tonight's journey together. You step onto the main caravan road just as the first mule jingles its bronze bell. A faint ribbon of saffron drifts past warm. Honeyed, a little like sunshine baked into pastry. Veteran traders swear they can judge distance by how that perfume thins against the chill rolling down from the Tian Shan. One sniff, they say, and you know exactly how many sandals lie between you and the next tea tent. Sure, your smartphone could do the same, but where's the romance in GPS when your nose can run the show? No roaming fees. Plus, it builds character in your nostrils. A widely known fact surfaces with the dawn. Gram for gram, saffron has been history's most expensive spice, even outpricing gold in several medieval markets. That may explain why a single spilled satchel makes grown men dive like penguins onto an anchovy buffet. Yet the Ada side of the tale is gentler. Some caravans stitch minuscule saffron strands into the hems of their banners, letting the cloth breathe scent as they march half advertisement, half barometer. Because if the fragrance fades too fast, you know the air is thinning, and the climb is steepening. You adjust your cloak faux cashmere from the outlet mall, but the camels don't judge. A donkey snorts, clearly offended you didn't splurge on genuine cashmere. Beside a spice broker, you watch the morning ritual. He opens a goatskin pouch, wafts it, and counts heartbeats before the smell escapes. 3 beats mean valley floor. 1 beat means you're practically kissing the clouds. Historians still debate whether this timing trick was widespread practice or playful. Folklore spun by Persian chroniclers who valued a good yarn over good data. Either way, it beats staring at an altimeter. While you practice, your fingertips turn the soft orange of sunset. At home, that stain takes 3 showers to fade bedtime tip. Vigorous scrubbing at 3 a.m. is the quickest route from drowsy to wide awake. Joke number 1 delivered. A troupe of musicians trudge past, drums wrapped in wool to keep the skins from cracking. One tries the nose test, sneezes so loudly it echoes off the cliffs, and the lead camel responds with what might be history's longest eye roll. Camel comedy is tragically underrated. Joke number 2, far ahead. Dawn brightens dusty ridges into silhouettes of sleeping dragons. You inhale faint citrus left by a market woman who swore dried orange peel keeps scorpions away. Joke number 3. She neglected to mention it also attracts bandits, desperate for vitamin C bandits. Like oregano, add flavor. Kashgar recedes. A weather-worn milestone appears where, legend claims, Persian and Chinese tax collectors once met to settle tariffs. Rumor adds they kept pet ferrets dipped in saffron water so their fur doubled as walking air fresheners, the ancient answer. To plug in diffusers, file that under eccentric curiosity of the night. Caravan leaders load cedar wood chests onto shaggy Bactrian camels. Cedar keeps moisture at bay and, ironically, tames saffron's strength. Each lid bears a Samarkand seal, proof of inspection. Modern airport security wishes it smelled half this good. The road narrows along a cliff where icy streams ribbon below. Another solid fact anchors the moment. Kashgar sat at the hinge between the northern and southern Silk Road routes. Whoever held these gates controlled gossip, taxes, and the steady river of jade. Lose Kashgar, lose the news feed. Your guide gestures for quiet, repeats the goatskin ritual, and predicts lunch at a village still hidden by ridges. You try it. The aroma lingers longer than a karaoke chorus. Feeling smug, you brag about your superior nostrils. He reminds you that arrogance is best seasoned lightly. To shade downslope, a cookfire cracks. Smoke mingles with saffron until it smells like pagella on vacation. Your stomach rumbles. The guide claims that's healthy acclimation, though it could just mean you're hungry enough to chew your own sandals. Leather cuisine is penciled in for Section 4. When pepper prices get spicy, a mountain jay chirps overhead, auditioning for alarm clock. You wave it away. This is a no notifications zone. Behind you, a sleepy apprentice tallies weights on parchment made from pressed mulberry bark. Each time his quill stalls, he inhales and nudges the figure up or down, pricing cargo by nasal. Intuition and olfactory stock market where futures rise and fall with the breeze. You laugh. The apprentice, startled, splashes ink across his sleeve and mutters that if the scent weakens any further, the balance sheet will crash harder than a tipsy donkey. Later, when the caravan squeezes through a narrow gap between leaning boulders, you overhear a debate about saffron blindness, the idea that porters, surrounded by golden spice, begin seeing ordinary sand as pale coins. Some merchants swear it's real, others dismiss it as mirage and wishful thinking. Historians remain divided, citing a lone Persian monk who admitted his spectacles were cracked. You decide that if the dunes ever start glittering, you'll simply close your eyes and declare yourself rich enough to nap. Up ahead lies a bend where caravans replace worn sandals. Traders lay spares like a roadside shoe buffet, each tagged with saffron paste so the owner can identify his pair by scent. Scholars still argue whether this practice was real or embroidered by Arab writers eager to make Silk Road footwear smell exotic. Either way, imagine a medieval footlocker where the sales associate greets you with sniff before you buy. The sun climbs, turning airborne dust to muted rose. You breathe slowly, letting calm settle behind your eyes. The faint bitterness of saffron overtakes even the wet wool aroma of your cloak. Before we close, tuck away one final morsel. Some caravanier swear that humming a Kazakh lullaby syncs your heartbeat with your camel's gait, easing saddle aches. Scientists crave evidence, but when the nearest lab is 2,000 miles east, you hum and hope for the best. With that quiet tune, your footsteps crunch over frost-tipped gravel, carrying you farther from the waking world and deeper into tonight's fragrant dreams. The trail widens into a wind-polished plateau where the mountains flatten, as if the earth itself decided to take a deep, sighing stretch. You leave the last rocky switchback behind and step onto a carpet of pebbles that crunch like coarse sugar. Under your boots, the chill of dawn recedes. In its place, the desert air warms just enough to make you loosen the knot at your scarf. Somewhere ahead, the first tea tent promises shade, small talk, and maybe a handful of figs that feels suspiciously like yesterday's leftovers. An acceptable trade for a place to sit. If Section 1 felt like you were strolling through a bottle of liquid gold, Section 2 is more like walking into the scent's echo chamber. Here, the saffron no longer simply drifts. It whispers, curls, and occasionally tries to hide. Humidity is the local magician, vanishing the fragrance whenever it feels theatrical. That's where the merchants come in with their goatskin pouches and their uncanny sense of timing. Your guide waves you closer and hands over a pouch no larger than your palm. One test, one result, he says, as though you're joining the world's sleepiest science fair. You untie the cord and catch the first puff of aroma sweet. Earthy, laced with that faint metallic tingle you smelled back at Kashgar's gate. The trick is to let the pouch hang open, then count silently until the scent fades. Officially, it's called the surai saffron, or saffron interval, a unit of measure as precise or imprecise as the nose in charge. First try, 1-2-3-4... 9 heartbeats before the fragrance thins. Your guide nods with the solemnity of a meteorologist predicting partly cloudy skies. 9 beats mean mild humidity, just enough moisture to keep skin supple, but not enough to make saddle blankets soggy. A trader behind you gets 12 beats and cheers like he's found extra. Vacation days. Joke number 1. He claims every heartbeat over 10 is worth a 5% discount at the next spice store. Sadly, the accountant riding next to him starts recalculating tariffs in panic. A well-known historical fact breezes in with the midday wind. Caravans crossing the Tarim Basin, the desert expanse you now enter often, relied on more than stars and milestones. Observers recorded how far a torch's smoke traveled, how quickly water evaporated, and yes, how long saffron perfume clung to the air. Those details shaped diaries that later guided dynasties and centuries on, inspired the first European explorers, dreaming of overland routes to Cathay. Not exactly GPS, but it kept a lot of people from wandering in circles, which would have been both embarrassing and extremely dehydrating. You run the test again, this time only 7 beats. A not so subtle warning that the air grows thirstier by the step. The guide flips his pouch closed with dramatic flair and mutters, "Saddle string weather." Translation: drink now or spend the afternoon gnawing your own tongue. He hands you a goatskin water bag that smells faintly of yesterday's goat. Joke number 2. You suddenly consider bottling that eau de shaver as the next trendy perfume, rustic nomad, by you. Guaranteed to repel both mosquitoes and close friends. Curiosity takes the stage with a flourish. A stout merchant walks ahead, wearing necklaces threaded with single saffron strands, each secured between tiny glass beads. He claims the beads amplify the scent, like megaphones for molecules, allowing him to detect microshifts in humidity before others notice. Whether it works or simply looks fabulous is anyone's guess, but the man struts like a runway model at Paris Desert Week. Historians still debate if such wearable hygrometers truly existed, or are there exaggerated tales of travelers who, after weeks in the sand, considered any jewelry a technological marvel. Mid-morning sun paints the plateau a bleached gold. Mirage ripples shimmer, turning distant shrubs into ghost ships. You spot a cluster of ragged stones, stacked waste highway markers known as ovus. Tradition says you add a pebble to thank the spirits for safe passage. You comply, slipping a saffron thread beneath your stone for extra good luck. Modern comparison, it's the medieval version of dropping a coin in a fountain, except you'll probably never pass this fountain again. and it comes without the risk of someone diving. For your loose change, a pair of teenage camel tenders jog by, racing to a tune whistled through desert dry lips. They argue about whose camel spit farther during breakfast. Joke number 3. Judging spitting distance is the Silk Road's unofficial Olympic sport new record pending official camel authority approval. You wonder how many camels it takes to form a judging committee and instantly regret picturing them seated in tiny chairs, holding scorecards. Lunch break arrives at a crescent-shaped alcove where sandstone bluffs cast just enough shade to keep brains from boiling. The tents go up like origami twist, flick, and suddenly canvas blooms. Within minutes, kettles clink, and the air thickens with green tea and goat butter. You notice every seasoned trader ties his goatskin pouch high on the central pole, away from steam. Moisture, after all, dilutes the saffron's perfume and ruins the next humidity reading. Someone quips that a soggy saffron pouch is less useful than a paper umbrella in monsoon season. No one argues. While sipping tea, you overhear talk of a caravan last season that relied solely on these smell tests to plot water stops. According to rumor, they arrived 3 days early in her dove. Efficiency yet, half their camels refused to kneel for unloading. The explanation: the beasts were so sick of saffron they staged a sit-in. Academic note: historians still debate whether the camels truly protested or if the drivers simply exaggerated to justify a longer nap in the nearest oasis. As always, the line between fact and after-dinner storytelling is about as steady as a dune in a windstorm. Shadows shift. Time to move. You resume the march, adjusting your rhythm to the camel in front left right. Right left, remember that. Heartbeat camel sync tip works like a charm. The ground crunches, and each step releases a puff of dust that settles like cinnamon on hot cocoa, except far less tasty. You test the pouch again. 5 beats. The air grows thirstier still. Ahead, the horizon splits, revealing low ridges streaked with iron deposits that glow rusty red. Your guide explains they call this stretch the dragon's spine. If you squint, the peaks form scales. If you don't, they're just more hills, proof that marketing existed long before billboards underfoot. You spot clusters of hardy wormwood. The guide plucks a sprig, crushes it, and he smells it, comparing its bitterness to the saffron's sweetness. The sharper the wormwood, the drier the air, an improvisational duet of aromas. One sweet, one savage, both telling you to conserve water. Widely known fact number 2 glides in. Wormwood, ancestor of absinthe's signature flavor, was also used by caravan medics to ward off intestinal parasites. Efficient, if unappetizing, the sun tilts westward, casting long blue shadows that look like spilled ink. At last you reach the day's rest station, a cluster of mud brick storehouses arranged around a well. Children dart between camel legs, offering apricot leather thin, tart strips that stick to your molars like guilt. You buy a roll, since it might be last season's batch, and decide chewy is better than empty. The well water tastes mineral rich, edged with iron. You refill your goatskin, wash granules of dust from your face, then test the pouch one final time for the day. 2 beats. Nightfall will bring bone-dry air and temperatures that drop faster than a pessimistic stock market. Best get your blankets ready as the sky turns lavender. Lanterns bloom across the encampment, each halo softening the edges of the world. Somewhere a lute plucks a repetitive lullaby. You find yourself counting along beats between notes, beats between smells until numbers blur, and all you hear is the hush of sand settling after wind. Your goatskin pouch hangs from the tent pole, mouth tied tight, guarding tomorrow's data in fragrant silence. For now, your senses rest, lulled by saffron's fading whisper and the promise of cooler stars overhead. The chill that wakes you before dawn feels sharper, as if the night stars have filed the air into fine needles. You break camp while caravan bells still ring like muffled alarm clocks and the horizon glows faint rose. The plateau tilts upward, and before long you're winding into the first slopes of the Pamir Mountain's lofty crags, so tall the locals call them the roof of the world, presumably because skylight of everything was taken. The gentle, saffron whisper from yesterday is long gone. Now a peppery bite touches each breath, the atmospheric equivalent of swapping chamomile tea for espresso. You hike single file along a trail carved into grey slate, frost crunching beneath your soles. To gauge altitude, the guide unveils a new sensory toy, a pouch of cinnamon sticks, their bark curled like tiny scrolls from a tree that never dreamed of snow. He snaps one in half and hands you a shard no longer than a match. "Chew," he says, and you oblige, half expecting a holiday cookie flashback. Instead, the woodiness mixes with thin, icy oxygen, turning the sweetness brittle and faint. Here's the game. The higher you climb, the less sugary the cinnamon tastes. Merchants swear they can pinpoint altitude within 50 meters by comparing the bark's sweetness against memory. Think of it as a nose-driven altimeter, no batteries required, though the aftertaste might strip enamel. Your guide records the result in a tiny ledger, then commands a water break, aware that cinnamon plus altitude equals a mouth as dry as week-old Peter. Joke number 1. If marketing ever catches wind of this, watch for Pamir Diet cinnamon loos. Wait through mild hypoxia and spontaneous hiking. Historical fact, time glides in like a yak on sure-footed paws for centuries. Caravans funneled through the Wakan and Okbaital passes here, trading silk, jade, and yes, cartons of cinnamon, grown thousands of miles south in Ceylon. Chinese records from the Han Dynasty describe the Pamirs as a corridor where snow meets spice, a phrase that sounds poetic until you're the one freezing your nostrils off. Those same chronicles mention traders sucking on bark to keep warm. Apparently cinnamon doubles as a portable campfire for your taste buds. By midday, the path zigzags across scree slopes under walls of pale limestone. You pause where meltwater dribbles down rock, tasting metallic and cold enough to stun teeth. The guide snaps a fresh cinnamon stick and invites you to retest. This time, the sweetness barely registers, polite wave rather than a handshake. You've climbed several hundred meters since breakfast. Scholars still dispute whether this sweetness to altitude correlation is chemistry or caravan folklore embellished over centuries. Skeptics argue barometric pressure can't alter sugar perception that dramatically. Romantics counter that any excuse to nibble cinnamon on company time is valid science. Wind picks up, carrying faint notes of quartz dust and distant yak, dung less glamorous than saffron, admittedly. You tuck scarf over nose and savor how the cinnamon warmth lingers on your tongue, a portable hearth against freezing gusts. Somewhere behind you, a porter attempts the same test and chokes on a splinter, launching a cough that echoes off the cliffs like a starting pistol. Joke number 2. Congrats, he just invented the Pamir Cinnamon Challenge, guaranteed to go viral in every marketplace with more camels than WI-Phi. The trail narrows to the width of a pantry shelf, with a drop that would make even the bravest mule consider early retirement. You hug the inner wall, boots slipping on gravel, and notice how each footstep stirs a puff of ground cinnamon, hue earth tinted by iron oxides, dusting everything like a pastry chef with a heavy hand. Your guide claims that in spring, shepherds add real cinnamon to goat stew up here, believing it wards off altitude sickness. Whether placebo or practical seasoning, the pot smells amazing, but you store that thought for dinner. Curiosity takes center stage as the caravan rounds a bend into a pocket valley. There, a cluster of stone cairns stand waist high, each topped with a flat slate slab etched with faint circles. The guide explains their nose maps, ancient carvings that mimic cinnamon curl patterns to show travelers which ridgelines correspond to stronger or weaker sweetness scores. Archaeologists argue over the symbol's purpose. Some call it early mnemonic art, others see mere doodles from bored goat herds. Either way, the idea of a topographic map keyed to flavor feels wonderfully eccentric, like using bubblegum pop. Songs to navigate subway lines. Clouds gather fast, smothering the sun and stealing half the warmth you had left. A snowflake kisses your cheek, delicate, but also a sign this pass doesn't care about your summer itinerary. The guide distributes Yaquol mittens that smell like a petting zoo on laundry day. Joke number 3. If you could bottle that scent, it'd clear subway seats faster than any motivational podcast. Climbing again, you count your breaths, one in, one out. Repeat while grinding a last shard of cinnamon between molars. The taste has faded to mere ghost of sweetness, replaced by mild astringency. The ledger shows an estimated altitude of 4,000 meters. You glance up. Peaks scrape a sky now bruised with navy clouds. Lightning flickers far off, illuminating serrated horizons. Time to find shelter before nature's percussion section cues the hailstones. Luck smiles in the shape of a traveler's hut built from stacked shale and timber dragged up by heroic yaks. Inside, smoky firelight dances on walls blackened by decades of pine resin. You crowd in with 20 strangers who all share the same 3 goals. Thaw fingers, swap rumors, and avoid stepping on the resident cat, who seems to own the lease. Everyone chews cinnamon while gossiping about snow closure on higher passes. A Mongol horse trader claims he once mapped the gradient so precisely he predicted the summit within a single horsehair's margin. Historians present and, yes, there's always at least one lurking still, argue whether his claim was brilliance or bravado. You hang mittens near the hearth and trade saddle stories, while steam rises from a pot of thukpa noodle soup flavored, predictably, with cinnamon and yak butter. The first sip spreads warmth clear to your toes, though it also leaves a slick mustache of fat across your upper lip fashion. Statement no mirror can fix. Conversation drifts to last night's saffron tests, and you notice how memory of golden perfume feels impossibly distant in this Spartan wood-smoked shelter. Yet someone swears they can still smell it in your hair. You laugh, suspecting kindness or olfactory hallucination, but tuck the compliment away like a souvenir. Outside, dusk settles, and snow whispers against the roof. Air so thin pours through gaps in the planks, carrying faint aroma of fires from lower camp, spiny, resinous, tinged with cinnamon. You munch one more shard, more for ritual than data. Its sweetness is now barely a rumor, confirming you've earned tonight's altitude bragging rights. You wrap yourself in camel hair blankets, listening to wind whine through the eaves like a distant flute. Counting heartbeats between gusts yesterday, it was fragrance beats. Today, wind beats. Either way, numbers soften your thoughts. Before sleep claims you, tuck away tonight's odd tidbit. Some monks who guided caravans here believed that if you recited prayers while chewing cinnamon, each syllable trapped a bit of heat inside your chest, warding off frostbite. Modern science has yet to test chest-stored warmth coefficients, but your toes appreciate the placebo. Tomorrow, new flavors will map new terrain, yet for now, you drift cocooned in bark's sweet breath. As the palmiers cradle you high above the waking world. You wake before sunrise to a low, rhythmic sloshwater. Not snowproof, you've left the roof of the world and drifted down toward a very different ceiling. A sky of pearl-grey fog hovering over the Indus River. Your knees remember every Pamir switchback, but your nose has a new assignment. Gone is cinnamon's brittle sweetness. In its place comes the sharp, nose-tingling promise of black pepper, the spice that sneaks up on you like a mischievous cousin and flicks your sinuses for fun. The caravan has traded yaks and snowpaths. 4 broad timber ferries lashed together with hemp rope thick as your wrist. Each hull creaks like a bedtime floorboard you swear you left silent. You step aboard, boots skidding on damp planks, and the river pilot greets you with a fistful of peppercorns instead of a handshake. "Quality check," he says, grinding 3 kernels beneath his thumbnail and waving the dust under your nostrils. The sneeze that follows could register on a seismograph. Joke number 1, you apologize to nearby goats who now believe the sky is falling. Fog curls across the water like spilled milk in morning tea, seeping into every fold of your cloak. Pilots here claim they can price entire cargoes by matching the pepper's bite to the fog's thickness. Sharp sting plus thin fog. Prime harvest, top rupees. Dull sting in soup-thick mist. Discount bin. It's a floating auction where your sinuses play the gavel. Widely known historical fact. Ancient texts note the Indus as a spice highway feeding pepper from the western Ghats to ports that eventually supplied Roman tables. Pliny the Elder even complained about how much gold Rome sent east just to keep its food interesting. You imagine him glaring at your ferry, ledger in hand, muttering about budget overruns in black pepper futures. The pilot calls for silence, then repeats the test. Crush, waft, wait. Pepper dust prickles your tongue before sinking into the damp air like fireworks that forgot to flash. He squints at the haze and declares, fair to good, 2 anklets of silver per sack. Somewhere aft, a merchant groans. Apparently, he was hoping for gold bracelet rates. Joke number 2. You'd comfort him, but your throat is busy staging a pepper-induced samba. You swallow water, only to discover it tastes faintly of river mud and last night's goat shampoo. Curiosity steps aboard in the shape of a weathered ledger pages coated with oily pepper residue. The book lists columns labeled sting, sneeze width, and fog height. The last measured by holding a bamboo rod vertically until its tip disappears in cloud. Historians still debate whether these units formed an actual standardized system, or if pilots simply enjoyed inventing paperwork to justify higher tips. Skeptics argue there's little chemical logic in fog-based pricing. Romantics insist that ritual bonded traders and pilots in fragrant camaraderie. Either way, the method has lasted longer than most corporate rebranding campaigns. The ferry shudders away from shore, oars dipping like giant soup spoons into pewter water. Each stroke sends dragonflies zigzagging, their wings clacking faintly nature's tiny maracas. You lean on the rail, pepper grit still dancing in your nose, and watch as bundles of turmeric, sacks of cardamom, and bolts of silk settle against one another. The cargo smells like someone appended an entire pantry into a closet made of wet wood. And yet pepper dominates, its aroma spiking whenever a sack shifts. You'd call it aromatic bullying if it didn't taste so good, sprinkled on everything. Halfway across, the pilot orders a midriff evaluation. Why here? Because the fog is densest where warm valley air meets cold mountain runoff, creating what he calls the pepper window. He produces a miniature mortar, grinds fresh corns, and invites you to inhale. The sting arrives like an electric jolt to the sinuses, then dissolves almost apologetically. A scribe notes the 3-tick tingle in his scroll. Joke number 3. You ask what happens at 4 ticks. The pilot grins. That's when the buyer sneezes himself over. Board price doubles if we fish him back out. You spot landmark terraced farms carved into hillsides, water wheels creaking like old storytellers, and mud brick villages where children wave strips of dyed cloth, betting whose color the fog will swallow first. One tosses a peppercorn high. It disappears, then lands with a plop on your hood. You return it like a signed autograph. Future archaeologists may label you anonymous pepper courier of the Indus. Wide keels scrape gravel as ferries nose into the southern bank. Porters unload with a choreography that would impress any royal court. 2 men lift, one tests aroma, another scribbles price. Bags shift like dominoes in a market math puzzle. Your cargo earns a respectable rate, stingy enough to prove quality, mellow enough that no one bleeds from the nostrils. Payment. Bolts, of course, cotton, plus a tiny clay seal stamped with a fish. Symbol, official mark of the local guild. You tuck it into your pouch next to cinnamon splinters and a lone saffron thread. A growing museum of nose-based navigation. A riverside bazaar sprawls beyond the dock stores, roofed with woven reeds, dripping moisture like lazy stalactites. Pepper scent mixes with frying lentil cakes and wood smoke, forming a cloud of comfort that hugs the shoreline. Street criers hawk first-press pepper oil they swear relieves toothaches. A skinny cat sneezes after sniffing the sample and promptly abandons his begging route. You buy a vial anyway, curious whether it cures drowsy evenings on long video edits. As afternoon wanes, the fog thins to gauzy ribbons, and valley colors bloom, jade rice paddies, rust-red hills, and the river itself turning molten bronze in late sun. You stroll the dock, breathing easier now that Pepper's assault has tapered to a friendly poke. Remember that camel's knees record from Section 2. Dock workers here compete by counting how many sneezes they manage before setting price. The current champion sits proudly at 8, though locals whisper he cheats by tickling his own nose with a feather. Historians still debate if feathers constitute performance-enhancing devices or simple showmanship. Before sunset, you board a smaller barge to continue downstream, peppercorns packed tight in wicker baskets sealed with beeswax. The pilot offers one last evaluation. Tradition demands the final price be blessed by the river at dusk. He taps out 3 corns, crushes them, and you inhale gently. The sting is mild, more suggestion than Commander Lullaby version of pepper. That means night air will settle clear, perfect for star navigation. Widely known fact number 2. Early astronomers along the Indus aligned pepper trading schedules with lunar phases, believing full moon moisture levels dulled the spice's bite, thus lowering prices. You look skyward. A sliver moon smiles, assuring. Favorable margins, you spread your blanket on deck, legs dangling inches above dark water that slips past like ink in a wide quill stroke. A cook ladles peppery lentil stew into wooden bowls. Each spoonful warms cheeks, cooled by river breeze. The pilot hums a folk tune about a pepper farmer marrying a cloud, clearly allegory for fog and spice. though you suspect it's also about impossible love and sneeze-filled vows. The barge drifts, oars resting. Only the river's hush and an occasional cackling goose break the silence. Your eyelids grow heavy. Pepper's spark has faded to a cozy ember glowing behind your sternum. You recall cinnamon altimeters, saffron, barometers, and wonder what scent-based science tomorrow will bring. For now, you curl beneath wool, listening to gentle lap of water against hull, counting heartbeats between distant temple bells, beat onto beat until numbers dissolve into dreams peppered with foglit fairies and floating auctions. Night settles over the Persian plateau like a velvet canopy dusted with diamonds, and you arrive at the caravanserai just as the last orange blush drains from the western horizon. The air feels velvety warm after the river chill, but something richer than temperature greets you first. A ribbon of frankincense rising from a bronze brazier, curling upward as if it wants to sketch constellations that the stars have forgotten. The scent is deeper and rounder than pepper, less mischievous, yet somehow more persuasive. Like a quiet storyteller who doesn't need to shout to keep you listening. Priests in linen robes shuffle about the courtyard, checking the placement of braziers with the solemnity of chess grandmasters. Each brazier sits on a compass rose mosaic, and every few minutes a priest squints at the smoke's angle, then scratches a notation onto a wax tablet. You recall yesterday's pepper fog auction and realize you've moved from sneeze economics to incense meteorology. Joke number 1 drifts in. Somewhere, a modern weather app just felt insecure. Your own nostrils act as time travelers, catching hints of lemony pine beneath the sweet resin, a layered perfume strong enough to mask camel. Funk but gentle enough to lull the most anxious merchant toward bedtime. Widely known historical fact, frankincense, harvested from boswellia trees along the Arabian and Somali coasts, fueled entire empires' tax budgets. Roman writers complained their citizens burned more incense in a week of festivals than the Senate spent on roads in a year. Those same senators would probably faint if they saw priests here, literally mapping the wind with the stuff. One priest beckons you closer. He explains that each wisp's tilt foretells tomorrow's breeze. A steady northward climb promises calm passage across Zagros passes. A sudden eddy toward the east warns of sandstorms sweeping from the Doshtilut. He hands you a polished copper, disc etched with concentric rings. Hold it level beneath the smoke, he instructs. You do, and the rising thread paints a spiral on the polished surface before vanishing into stars. The pattern, he says, will guide your caravan to the safest saddle between cliffs at dawn. You're pretty sure your phone's compass is jealous. Curiosity glitters at the brazier's rim. Tiny shards of colored glass, carnelian, and jade nestle amid the coals. The priest explains they sprinkle gem chips to tint the smoke's hue, making subtler wind shifts visible by lantern light. Is it practical science or theatrical flair? Either way, the result looks like a genie's daydream. Historians still debate whether this chromatic code truly improved forecasting or merely dazzled patrons into larger donations. The academic footnotes read like a mixed review section on an ancient crowdfunding page. A caravan scribe copies the spiral pattern onto parchment, then compares it against older diagrams stored in goatskin scroll cases. He grumbles that tonight's swirl resembles a goat's tail in monsoon season, meaning awkward gusts by noon. Joke number 2. Somewhere, a goat takes offense and schedules its own press conference. You ask the scribe how accurate these predictions. Run. He taps his stylus on a scarred tooth and says, better than a gambler, worse than a prophet, so decent odds. Memory pulls you back to saffron wind checks and cinnamon sweetness tests. Those felt like personal rituals. This incense. Mapping is communal, almost theatrical. Half the courtyard audience simply stares at the fragrant plumes, lost in meditative hush punctuated by rustling dates and muted belches. The lentil stew here airs on the enthusiastic side. You join them, breathing the resin's warmth until your shoulders begin to drop their knot of road fatigue. The smoke rises straighter now, hinting at stable air. Priests swap relieved glances. Stable air means fewer saddle sores tomorrow. A star falls, stitching a silver dash above the brazier. The youngest priest claps softly. Seasoned ones barely shrugged, too focused on wind omens. Another historical nugget drifts by. Zoroastrian fire temples once regulated frankincense quotas, ensuring sacred fires produced consistent columns for both worship and weather reading. Some scholars argue caravan priests borrowed the technique. Adding commercial spin, there's nothing like divine brand endorsement to sell navigational services. Others insist secular traders developed it first. Priests merely sanctified an already profitable hack. Lanterns along the courtyard wall flicker, and you spot an almost invisible shift. The smoke begins to lean westward. A subtle angle, but enough to prompt new wax scratches on tablets. Joke number 3. You imagine push notification pop-ups above each brazier. Wind advisory, sprinkle extra gems. One priest actually mutters about upgrading to bigger tablets. You suspect budgeting committee meetings transcend centuries. With readings complete, attendants tamp coals and offer visitors small cloth pouches of frankincense beads. Sleep pillows, they call them tuck. The pouch beside your head, breathe sweetly, dream lightly. You accept, adding it to your growing spice museum. The priest smiles, explaining that caravanners believe inhaling frankincense overnight clears lungs fouled by desert dust. Modern science, indeed, lists anti-inflammatory compounds, though double-blind trials remain scarce. The courtyard empties as merchants retire to alcoves draped in striped cotton. You settle onto a reed mat, propping your head on a rolled cloak. The sky above Persia feels wider than any you've known. Perhaps because the smoke draws your gaze upward, connecting hearth to cosmos. Constellations sharpen Orion, Taurus, and what locals call the camel's gaze. 3 faint stars forming a sideways face that seems perpetually unimpressed. You chuckle quietly, remembering camel eye roll best picture from section 1. Sleep edges. Closer, yet your mind lingers on tonight's curiosity. Gem-tinted smoke as meteorological code. You picture a secret legend of dye merchants bribing priests to slip their gem shards into coals, turning every forecast into a marketing stunt. Historians might call that speculation. Vloggers would call it influencer partnership. Either way, you're impressed that color coordinated. Incense could steer whole caravans and economize across deserts. The brazier embers fade to a soft ruby glow, mirroring the last slivers of carnelian at its base. A mild breeze, finally, tilts the smoke west, just enough to confirm dawn's route. Priests nod, satisfied, and extinguish flames with lids shaped like inverted lotus petals. Quiet blankets the courtyard. Frankincense lingers in pockets of air, each breath now edged with faint citrus and pine. A comforting signature that fuses road dust, starlight, and distant harbors into one inhalation. You close your eyes, counting. Heartbeats between ember, pops beat after beat, until numbers slide into dreams perfumed with resin and guided by whispers of smoke. Tomorrow, you'll follow that invisible map through valleys striped with pistachio orchards, but for now, under Persian stars, you drift weightless, buoyed by sweet aromatic sleep. Dawn hasn't fully cracked the horizon when the caravan's wheels finally crunch onto Baghdad's dust-packed causeway. But the city is already wide awake, yawning spice-laden breaths into the pale sky. You slip past a reed gate and the smell of frankincense you slept in dissolves, replaced instantly by clove. Sweet and spicy, like cinnamon's bolder cousin wearing a velvet cape. The alleys tighten, twist, then bloom into the maze of the Souk Olateran, the famed spice district, where every stall seems to shout in aroma before a single merchant opens his mouth. Your guide gestures for quiet, a finger pressed to nose rather than lips. Here, directions come scented. Clove, smugglers, yes, they exist, and they prefer the term aromatic entrepreneurs, draw invisible maps in their heads, based on how cloves' warmth slices through competing odors. You breathe in, first note, roasted coffee from a corner. Stall, second goatskin, sandalwood polish. Then the clove spike, sharp as a drumbeat, pointing you left like an olfactory compass needle. Joke number 1 drifts in. If modern GPS used scent, traffic jams would smell like fast food drive-thrus at rush hour. Widely known historical fact. During the Abbasid Golden Age, Baghdad's location on the Tigris made it the beating heart of Indian Ocean and Silk Road trade. Records from the 9th century mention entire docks piled with sacks of cloves shipped from the distant Moluccas. Their value so high that caliphs reportedly weighed them against silver dust. You imagine a royal accountant sneezing every time the scales tipped. Occupational hazard no abacus could fix. A clove broker in striped turban waves you closer. He holds a narrow bronze scoop and pours a trickle of glossy brown buds into your palm. Chew gently, he advises, watching like a doctor checking reflexes. The initial taste is medicinal sweet, then numbing, like miniature ice packs partying on your tongue. Good potency, he says, judging by the speed your lower lip tingles. He writes a quick note, 3 vertical strokes, and a parchment pinned. To his stall, potency code, street corner, prevailing breeze. Another data point in Baghdad's sprawling, smell-based navigation system. Curiosity crouches beneath the counter, a weathered map unlike any you've seen. No streets, just spirals, radiating from dots, each dot labeled with a spice symbol. Clove runs strongest here, the broker explains, pointing to a spiral thicker than the rest. Follow the narrowing rings and you'll find the hidden exit from the souk. Smugglers, he claims, stash contraband cloves in underground cisterns. To reach them without torches, they memorize where the aroma trumps the funk of camel pens. Historians still debate whether these so-called nose maps ever existed outside tall-tale banter over mint tea, or if dusty travelers simply enjoyed embellishing their navigational heroics. Either way, you'd back their sense of smell against any bloodhound. Your guide leads you into an alley so narrow your shoulders nearly brush both walls. Overhead, woven mats filter sunlight into zebra stripes. At each intersection, he pauses, cracks a clove between fingernails, and lets the scent mingle with the air. When the aroma meets roasted sesame oil, you turn right. When it collides with fresh dates, you veer left. It's like deciphering a perfumed Morse code. You consider bottling the method as an ASMR maze game. Scratch hands, NIF DLC included. Joke number 2. Inevitable microtransaction. Pay 2 diners to unlock bonus nose Pout drops, mid-morning heat thickens, and cloves volatile oils bloom even stronger. Vendors splash water on clay floors to trap dust and cool the breeze. Steam rises, carrying clove in warm waves that brush your cheeks like a friendly slap. A tanner somewhere nearby dips leather in pomegranate dye. The fruity tang tries to dominate, but clove retorts with a spicier comeback. Your sinuses sign a peace treaty and simply enjoy the duel. A scholar in indigo robes stands beside a low table stacked with bound folios. He claims to track clove drift hourly, charting how morning sun, noon thermals, and evening sea breezes warp the scent's reach. He shows you a parchment tiny dots of crushed clove pressed onto it at sunrise and noon, ready for comparison. By dusk, his theory, scent arcs reveal air current patterns, vital intelligence for launching messenger pigeons. Whether groundbreaking science or bird-based astrology, nobody here questions a man holding that many ink pots. You nod respectfully, pocketing a scrap of his data for later bragging rights. Remember that camel eye roll from section 1. Replace the camel with a Baghdad alley cat. You lift a clove sample for another test. The cat appears, sniffs, sneezes, then stalks off, looking scandalized. Joke number 3. You've apparently offended feline haute cuisine. Next time, garnish the sample with sardine oil. Lunch arrives in the form of simoon flatbread, stuffed with minced lamb, onions, and surprise ground cloves, blended with cumin. The spice lifts the meat's sweetness, and the numbing tingle convinces your taste buds they're receiving a gentle massage. You recall cinnamon altitude tests and pepper fog pricing. Compared to those, clove occupies a more intimate niche, part anesthetic, part amplifier. Chewed after meals, it freshens breath. Pressed into toothaches, it dulls pain. A multitasker. Before multitasking was cool, a storyteller at a nearby cafe claims smugglers once trained cats to wear tiny pouches of crushed clove around their necks, using the animals as moving beacons to mark safe back alley routes. Scholars scoff, pointing out cats rarely obey even the simplest orders, yet the tale persists, perhaps because everyone loves imagining smug felines turning spice runners. Historians still argue whether any such whiskered couriers prowled Abbasid streets, or if the myth began as a tavern wager after one too many pomegranate wines. Either way, the visual sticks. Somewhere in time, a cat might have guided contraband with dignified indifference. The afternoon sun slants lower, and storekeepers douse woven awnings to cool shoppers. As water hisses on clay roofs, steam billows, briefly muffling clove's dominance. Your guide notes the softness, warns that twilight breezes will stir competing aromas rosewater. Grilled fish, sandalwood incense from the mosques. If you lose the clove thread, you risk wandering in circles until midnight calls echo. He gives you a parting test. Crack one last bud, breathe, memorize its profile warm wood, hint of pepper, lingering sweetness. That imprint will serve as your compass arrow. Any deviation alerts you to wrong turns. Bells from the city's western gate toll 6 times. Time to slip away before night crowds thicken. You follow your scent compass through a vaulted passage lined with mosaic tiles, each pattern a burst of cobalt and gold worthy of a house in a fairy tale. Halfway through, coffee beans roasting nearby threaten to hijack your nostrils, but you hold the clove memory steady. At the archway's end, a gust of desert air carries a pure, unmistakable spike of spice. You step into fading sunlight now, complete as the caravan regroups outside the city's walls. You glance back. From this distance, Baghdad's domes gleam above a haze seasoned by thousands of cooking fires and countless cloves cracked throughout the day. The scent drifts outward like subtle Morse code, promising safe routes to those who can read it, delicious disorientation to those who cannot. You pocket a few buds for your traveling spice museum, nestling them beside saffron, cinnamon, pepper, and frankincense. Parcels a scratch and sniff, chronicle of your journey. Night's first stars blink on. You breathe deeply, feeling cloves' warmth settle behind your sternum like an ember ready to glow through the dark ride ahead. Tomorrow, fresh aromas will take the lead, but tonight you trace the city's spicy signature across your senses. As the caravan rolls into the desert, following invisible trails only your trained nose can see. The desert feels a lifetime behind you when the salt-heavy breath of the Ligurian Sea sweeps over the waterfront of Genoa. Gulls screech overhead in outrage. At absolutely everything proof, you've traded sand for surf, and the harbor's forest of masts creaks like 1,000 hinges begging for oil. You step off the gangplank onto cobbles slick with fish scales, saffron thread still wedged in your bootlace. A souvenir from the caravan days that now smells faintly of seaweed. Ahead looms the Doge's customs house, but your destination lies 2 streets inland, the Archivio dei Naviganti, a stone labyrinth where Genoese clerks guard scrolls the way dragons guard gold. Inside, lamplight dims to a honey glaze that reminds you of frankincense nights. A pale clerk waves you forward, eyes as sharp as peppercorns. Instead of demanding papers, he offers a grater and a whole nutmeg the size of a small marble. "Test it," he says, as though issuing a passport. You shave a curl into your palm. The aroma blooms warm, woody, a whisper of vanilla with a sly menthol edge. He watches your pupils dilate, nods approval, and unlocks an iron-bound chest taller than he is. Joke number 1. Somewhere your TSA agent just felt professionally inadequate. The clerk unfurls a parchment longer than a dinner table. No oceans, or meridians only, concentric bands of pale ochre ink, each labeled with a Latin abbreviation and tiny sketches of nutmeg seeds. Latitude lines, he explains, replaced by gradations of pungency. Genoese captains, it seems, once charted their progress toward the Spice Islands by comparing the bite of sampled nutmeg against these inked rings. Maritime scratch, sniff cartography, centuries before scented stickers were cool. Widely known historical fact, in the 15th century a single sack of nutmeg could finance a ship's entire voyage, which explains why otherwise sensible sailors sailed straight into cyclones for the stuff. He hands you a slim wooden box filled with ranked shavings, each labeled according to the map's scale. L1 mild, L2 mellow, all the way to L12 blistering. You try an L5 pleasant warmth, gentle tingle. The clerk marks your reaction on a wax tablet, comparing it to the average nasal acuity of Mediterranean crew. Apparently your senior deckhand material. Joke number 2. Congratulations, your resume now includes assistant nose. On 15th century spice expedition, curiosity crouches in the next chest. A brass astrolabe whose sighting plates are riddled with tiny holes. The clerk explains the device once held grated nutmeg. Navigators inhaled through the perforations while aligning the instrument to Polaris. If the aroma matched the expected potency for that latitude, they knew they'd plotted true north. Historians still discuss whether this was legitimate praxis or just an elaborate excuse to indulge in the mildly euphoric side effects of over-sniffing nutmeg, which in large doses can make sailors giggle at rigging knots that aren't actually there. He places the astrolabe in your hands. You angle it toward a high window where afternoon light slants in. One cautious sniff later, your sinuses tingle with an L7 punch, stronger than expected for Genoa's coordinates. The clerk raises an eyebrow, consults a barometer, and smiles. Storm brewing, he murmurs. Low pressure amplifies volatile oils. So yes, you just forecast weather using a spice grater and medieval hardware. Somewhere, a camel from Section 1 would be rolling its eyes again if it weren't blissfully ignorant of maritime meteorology. Shelves around you grown with scrolls tied by ribbons in saffron. Cinnamon, pepper, clove color coded to the spice, used as their measuring stick. One ribbon flutters down, releasing a dusty aroma of cardamom and salt. You pocket it, telling yourself it's archival debris, not theft. Librarians everywhere sense a disturbance in the force. While you browse, the clerk recounts a legend. A fleet once attempted to navigate solely by nutmeg potency, refusing to consult stars out of hubris. They overshot the Moluccas by a month, landed on an uncharted reef, and spent the season inventing new swear words the dictionary refused to print. Scholars argue whether the tale warns against sensory overconfidence or simply mocks penny captains who skipped hiring a proper astronomer. Either way, the phrase "lost a ship for a sniff" still circulates in dockside taverns. Joke number 3. Modern equivalent, turning off Google Maps. Because you felt a strong latte vibe pointing left, the clerk invites you to contribute data. He produces a fresh nutmeg, asks you to shave and rank it. You oblige, marking an L6. He stamps the parchment with a tiny cameo of your profile cartographer's tradition to honor guest noses. Your face now travels, in effigy, on any voyage guided by this map. If that's not influencer status, what is? Widely known fact number 2 drifts into conversation. During the early 16th century, Venice and Genoa waged economic war over spice monopolies. Genoa's secret weapon was allegedly these pungency charts, allowing faster routes by shaving. Days off navigation. Modern historians question how much faster a scratch-and-sniff map could be, but concede that placebo confidence might shave as many storms as any compass. Confidence, after all, is the ultimate tailwind. The clerk rolls the parchment and tucks it into a beeswax-sealed tube. He slips it into your travel satchel with the gravitas of bestowing a knighthood. Guard it from damp, he warns. Moisture dulls nutmeg's bite and erases the entire coordinate system. You nod, remembering turmeric ledgers coming up on your itinerary. Spices and humidity have a complicated relationship, like celebrities and Twitter. You step back into daylight. Genoa's sea breeze mingles with wood smoke from harbor taverns, diluting nutmeg until only a ghost of flavor lingers in the air. Even so, you feel the new spice beacon pulsing in your satchel, guiding your inner compass eastward. Next stop, the rim of the South China Sea, where star anise songs supposedly choreograph dock workers, rhythms, but that is music for another dawn. For tonight, you walk the quay counting heartbeats between gull cries, the way you once counted saffron intervals beneath Kashgar's walls. Numbers blur, waves hush, and a nutmeg-scented breeze escorts you toward sleep aboard a gently rocking deck. Grey dawn seeps through tattered sails as your junk noses up the Pearl River Delta, sliding toward the vast wooden throat of Guangzhou's 13 Factories wharf. You brush the last crumbs of ship biscuit from your eyelids just as a gust of harbor air hits, wet hemp rope, fermented fish, and there it is, star anise, bright and licorice sharp, skimming across the tide like a pebble skipping on glass. The fragrance feels playful after nutmeg's velvet hum, a cool peppermint wink that whispers, "Welcome to Canton," where even the wind carries seasoning before any overseer can bark an order. The dockworkers start to sing. The melody is low and hypnotic, almost a cradle song, except for the percussive slap of sandals against planks. Each verse swells precisely when the breeze sweeps star anise aroma off the drying racks stacked 3 stories high behind the spice lofts. When the scent thins, the singers drop to a hum and heave another crate. When it floods back, they belt, the chorus and whole in perfect unison. The harbour runs on an unlikely duet. Noses set the tempo, voices keep the beat. Cargo moves to music only the olfactory can hear. Joke number 1 arrives with the bosun, who mutters that Guangzhou is the only port where you can be fired for having a head cold. No scent, no song, no salary. You immediately pledge eternal loyalty to your cynices. A widely known historical fact sails in with the river. Missed during the late Ming and early Qing dynasties, Canton Guangzhou to locals monopolized China's foreign trade under the system. European, Arab and Indian vessels queued here for tea, porcelain and star anise. The last prized not merely for kitchens, but for masking the less charming odors of months-long voyages. Those ships carried star anise home, where Parisian patisseries folded it into pain d'epices and Ottoman apothecaries prescribed it for coughs. Proof that one dock's morning breeze could rewrite world menus. Curiosity swings from the rigging. Overhead, dock foremen carry slender bamboo whistles drilled crosswise. Each is packed with powdered star anise and sealed with lacquer save a single pinhole. When the wind stalls and the choir risks drifting off tempo, a foreman blows once. A puff of aromatic dust detonates above the deck. The crew inhales, the rhythm resets, and the cranes creak back on count as if conducted by an invisible licorice. Baton, whether Pavlovian conditioning or genuine olfactory artistry, the effect is precise and more than a little theatrical. You follow your guide along a catwalk that sways between sugar crates and porcelain barrels. He offers you a single star anise pod and urges you to bite gently. The flavor blooms, sweet fennel, warm clove, a cool trace of mint. For a heartbeat the docks sharpen, every rope, fiber and mast pole outlined by spicy vapor. Historians still debate whether anethol, star anise's main compound, truly heightens alertness enough to improve balance, or whether that claim was a clever union pitch for mid-shift spice rations. Either way, you suddenly feel nimble enough to tightrope a yard-arm. The next loading bay hosts a choir of 20 men stacking tea chests. Their song modulates whenever a stronger pulse of star anise rides the breeze, like a live DJ remixing. Tempo on the fly. Joke number 2. You muse that Spotify should hire this harbor's microclimate as its recommendation algorithm suggested track. Licorice lo-fi beats to unload cargo to your guide. Laughs so hard he nearly drops his clipboard. Between verses, one stevedore shows you a tally board, 1 slash for each chorus, 5 slashes per crate moved. At shift's end, the foreman multiplies chorus count by crate factor to calculate wages. Any worker who misses a cent, Q, sings a solo apology ballad in quavering falsetto, dockside karaoke, but there's exactly one track in the playlist titled, "Sorry, I lost the beat." You vow never again to complain about electronic Temesuk. Another curiosity bobs near the waterline. Bundles of fresh Elysium verum branches, tied to buoyant gourds, float beside each moored junk. Sailors swear the leaves deter barnacles better than tar, and, as a bonus, perfume the lower decks through hull seams. Marine biologists might roll their eyes, yet a century of captains logged slower fouling on spice-equipped hulls apparently. Barnacles, like picky diners, loathe licorice. The sun climbs, warming curved grey roof tiles and coaxing more volatile oils from the racks. Star anise intensifies, and the dock choir's tempo creeps upward until crates blur into a conveyor belt powered by lungs and melody. Joke number 3 staggers onto stage when a visiting Dutch merchant tries to match the beat over and faints. Dockhands revive him with a dab of pure anise oil under his nose, which makes him sneeze himself awake. Cantonese first aid, dramatic, effective, and delightfully aromatic. Your senses, kaleidoscope memories, saffron-lit Kashgar mornings, cinnamon frost in the Pamirs, pepper fog on the Indus, frankincense constellations over Persia, clove, labyrinths. In Baghdad, nutmeg latitudes in Genoa. Now star anise adds its 8-pointed geometry to the atlas behind your eyelids. Each spice a compass, each aroma a coordinate. You picture some monastic scholar stitching these fragrant roots into one grand scroll. Call it the odor. Odyssey then chuckle at the idea of librarians fainting from sensory overload by late afternoon. The final crates thud onto wagons bound inland. Dock singers ease into a languid coda, voices trailing like red silk ribbons across still air. Bamboo whistles fall silent. Quiet reveals smaller sounds, rope fibers sighing, water kissing, hulls, one gull scolding the sun for setting too slowly. You pocket 2 pods for your travelling museum and step onto the quay where lanterns begin to wink awake. A tea vendor beckons, pours a cup infused with star anise and dried tangerine peel. The first sip tastes like sunset distilled sweet dusk and citrus twilight together, a gentle landing pad after the day's melodic exertion. As you drink, the vendor recites a proverb. When the spice sings, the ship obeys. You decide it's both wisdom and lullaby. The perfect closing line for tonight's logbook. Evening mist creeps upriver, cool and faintly briny, diluting the licorice temps into soft sweetgrass. Workers drift home humming echo fragments of the chant. You lean against a balustrade, breathing slower, letting the rhythm settle behind your ribs until your pulse glides with the fading song. Stars prick the sky above curved roof lines. You count heartbeats between boat bells, then between your own breaths, until numbers dissolve and only hush remains, hush seasoned with the faint, 8-pointed whisper of star anise, guiding you gently towards sleep. Sultry coastal air wraps around you like a damp quilt as the spice sloop glides into Calicut's harbour at dawn. The Arabian Sea heaves languidly, green-grey under low, bruise-coloured clouds that threaten to unbutton themselves at any moment. Compared to Guangzhou's star anise symphony, this port feels muffled, as though the humidity itself has stuffed cotton in the world's ears. Yet one scent pierces the haze, Timora crithy, citrus bright, a sunshine flash trying valiantly to outshine the gathering monsoon. You disembark onto planks that squish beneath bare feet. Yesterday's squall left puddles everywhere, each reflecting slanted palms like nervous weather vanes. A clerk in a saffron-dyed dhoti, you silently applaud the colour commitment, beckons you toward a long shed where wooden slats have been pried up to reveal smooth stone benches streaked a vibrant yellow. This is the Lacana, the writing house, but here pens are noses, and ink is powdered turmeric. Your guide distributes narrow bamboo trays, each dusted with a measured pinch of turmeric. One breath, one record, he instructs, the mantra. Echoing pepper fog valuations and cinnamon altitude checks you've performed in lifetimes past, or at least in countries past. You lean in and inhale. The aroma leaps up. Warm gingerbread, bitter orange peel, and a metallic taint that reminds you of coins warmed in sunlight. The clerk watches your eyelids flutter and times the fade with a cowbone tick counter. 9, tick smiled. Potency, he notes it on a palm leaf ledger in swirling Malayalam script. Joke number 1. You wonder if corporate expense reports back home would feel friendlier if filed on palm fronds perfumed with turmeric. Then again, auditors might sneeze. Golden dust all over the balance sheets. Call it value-added overspend. A widely known historical fact drifts past on a moist breeze. Calicut, modern, cozy code, sat at the heart of the Malabar coast spice trade for centuries. Famous not only for black pepper, but also for turmeric harvested inland on redland soils. Sailors dubbed the port the Golden Basin because everything from house paint to medical poultices seemed stained a permanent marigold. Vasco da Gama's fleet recorded entire market lanes glowing yellow at sunset. He probably left with suit cuffs forever incriminated. Inside, the Lacana hums with quiet industry. Accountants symboled as turmeric scrubbed coconuts sit cross-legged. Before long, stone slabs nicknamed weather tablets. Each tablet is divided into colored lanes. Saffron for dawn, jade for noon, indigo for dusk. They sprinkle microdoses of turmeric into the saffron lane, then start a metronome fashioned from a dripping coconut shell. As the drip marks time, 5 scribes sniff in unison and jot potency scores onto the palm leaves. Later, those figures feed a Varsha Sankhya, the monsoon ledger predicting rainfall, river swell, even the exact hour when fishing boats should haul nets. Historians still debate whether turmeric's aromatic strength truly correlates with impending storms, or the practice emerged because merchants needed some quantifiable ritual to reassure jittery captains. Skeptics point to inconsistent records. Aficionados counter that early meteorologists elsewhere were no more precise. Remember those frankincense priests who read wind like gossip. At least, turmeric smells better than goat fat on a barometer. The clerk invites you to repeat the test after 15 minutes. This time, the aroma bites sharper, and your nostrils twitch as though zapped by hidden pepper ghosts. 7 ticks higher potency. He grins, taps the darkening clouds, and mutters Kalakadal by dusk. The infamous phantom sea that floods low villages without warning. Joke number 2. You half whisper that your travel insurance defines phantom sea as an exclusion. He suggests adding a turmeric sniffing clause. Curiosity lines the walls in earthen jars painted with minimalist rain glyphs. You peek inside one and find turmeric tinted red, another lime green, another deep aubergine. The accountant explains, dyes shift turmeric's vapor profile, letting scribes fine-tune sensitivity, think scent equalizer knobs. In theory, crimson-dyed turmeric reacts faster to barometric drops, green to humidity spikes, purple to wind shear. Patterns aloft. Whether science or synesthesia, the rainbow powder looks like a desert buffet for abstract painters. A gong thrums outside. Fishermen haul baskets of mean polakuthu, banana leaf-wrapped fish laced with, you guessed it, turmeric. The aroma competes with the ledger tests, causing flare-ups of erroneous readings. To compensate, clerks chew raw mango slices. The sour kick clears the nose. They claim, akin to smelling coffee beans between perfumes. Joke number 3. Somewhere, a Parisian sommelier just fainted at the idea of mango as palate cleanser. Mid-morning rain begins in fat, decisive splats, drumming on terracotta tiles. The accountants rush to sprinkle fresh turmeric into the indigo lane ahead of schedule. Drops of rainwater hiss on the stone, releasing steam-tinted gold. You sniff. This batch jolts the sinuses like a tiny, polite slap. 5 ticks, storm incoming, no debate. Widely known fact number 2 surfaces with thunder. In Ayurvedic practice, turmeric's essential oil density is believed to fluctuate with seasonal moisture, making it both spice and barometer. Whether ancient physicians quantified that with drip counters remains uncertain, but the Lakana surely thinks so as rain intensifies. You notice a series of shallow grooves etched along the room's threshold. Water flows through them, turning yellow as it dissolves stray powder, then sluices into a courtyard cistern where children splash, dabbling fingers in gold. Local legend says, bathing in Haldi, Poni turmeric, water during first monsoon rain, blesses the soul against snake bites and bad contracts. Historians shrugged. Snakes rarely sign contracts, but folklore keeps feet dancing. The clerk ties a turmeric-stained thread around your wrist tradition for visitors who've helped compile the ledger. He claims it wards off lethargy during rainy season. You suspect placebo, yet already feel a bright zing in your pulse. Outside, streets flash mustard under sheeted rain. Vendors flipping tarps over ginger. Mounds before the monsoon's first gust scatters petals from temple garlands. You head toward the harbour warehouse where pepper was once king. Today turmeric has stolen the crown. Dockworkers shovel sacks into barges while chanting a rhythm that syncs with thunderclaps. Louder than Guangzhou's sweet choir, but sharing the same principle. Weather sets the tempo, spice keeps the beat. You inhale through the wrist thread. The scent is faint now, but steady. A metronome beneath the storm's roar, as twilight bruises the clouds darker still. Your guide announces the ledger's verdict. Rain through the night, clearing near dawn. Safe sailing by midday if the turmeric in the jade lane falls below 8 ticks. You store that figure like a password. Lulled by rain's percussion, you walk the quay, past lanterns blurred into halos by downpour. Memory flickers, saffron heartbeats, cinnamon sweetness, pepper stings, frankincense spirals, clove compass, nutmeg latitudes, star anise songs, turmeric's. Golden pulse now joins the chorus. Another waypoint on your scented atlas. You duck under a palm leaf awning, settle onto a koya mat, and listen to rain-lashed tin roofs. Each drop drums a countdown until the storm passes. You match breaths to drips. Drips to the faint turmeric echo lingering in your wrist thread beat after beat until numbers smear into the hush between thunderclaps. Sleep tiptoes in, wrapped in monsoon's lullaby and turmeric's warm glow, promising safe passage through the night. Dawn slides a silver knife between retreating clouds, carving open a sky scrubbed clean by the monsoon's night-long tantrum. You wake on a damp koya mat, turmeric thread still fragrant on your wrist, and peer across Calicut's glistening quay. Boats that bobbed like corks in yesterday's squall now shimmy impatiently. Sails unfurling in a breeze, scented less with salt and more with something cool, minty, almost eucalyptus-like cardamom, the self-proclaimed queen of spices, summoning you inland. By mid-morning you're bumping along a red laterite road in an ox cart, whose canopy drips last-minute raindrops on your forehead. The driver winks, saying, "Follow your nose uphill." The tacksmen are waiting. He means the Hill Kingdom's caravan station perched halfway up the Western Ghats, where every inbound cargo must surrender to the world's most aromatic audit. Joke number 1 drifts in. Imagine your local IRS replacing spreadsheets with scented candles. Refunds would never smell like defeat again. The climb winds through cardamom estates, emerald terraces shaded by tall silver oaks. With each hairpin turn, the air sharpens lemony, menthol and sweet all at once, as if peppermint invited citrus to tango under a pine-scented disco ball. You breathe deep. Yesterday's turmeric warmth is now a distant hum beneath this alpine coolness. Widely known historical fact. For centuries, traders called these hills the Cardamom Mountains, exporting green pods to Greek physicians, Roman perfumers, and, eventually, Scandinavian bakers who sprinkled them into sweet buns. That broke winter's gloom. Those buns, you suspect, never paid customs like you're about to. 3 hours of switchbacks later, the cart creaks into the Palian Customs courtyard stone walls, tiled eaves, and a gate painted the same jade as fresh cardamom husks. Guards in cotton uniforms sniff the air before bothering to check paperwork. Your driver unloads burlap sacks stenciled with elephant logos. Each sack oozes spicy vapor the way a bakery leaks cinnamon. A clerk greets you with a wooden tablet carved into concentric rings. Think archery target for noses. Tariff wheel, he explains. We grade cent radius, then levy tax. Here's the ritual. A tax scribe slices open a sack, lifts a bronze ladle of pods, and waves it gently. You stand at the wheel's center while assistants pace outward in 4 directions, inhaling like Sommelier apprentices. Where the scent fades, they drive a bamboo peg into the ring. The farther the aroma travels, the higher the tax proof. Your cargo retained premium oils instead of being diluted during the trek. Historians still debate whether this centradius tariff, truly standardized revenue, or simply justified creative bribe structures. Skeptics note that wealthy merchants always seemed to exude mysteriously shorter scent clouds come audit day. Your guide hands you a single pod, urging you to chew. The seed bursts cool and peppery, tingling gums as though brushing teeth with forest toothpaste. He times the numbing fade 5 heartbeats, declares the pod grade S, for so potent it might pay its own taxes. Joke number 2. Pity the smugglers who tried watering down spice with marbles. Auditors' noses turned them into instant charity donors. A curiosity waits beside the ledger desk. Rows of silk ribbons dyed in gradient greens, from pistachio to rainforest. Each ribbon corresponds to a tariff bracket. After grading, clerks tie the matching ribbon around the sack's neck, creating a kaleidoscopic stockpile that doubles as a giant revenue pie chart. You watch as your cargo earns a deep-moraled ribbon's second highest bracket. The driver groans about margins. You admire how lovely taxation looks when color-dash coordinated. Lunch arrives as a leaf-wrapped parcel of red rice, coconut relish, and naturally cardamom-steamed plantains. Eating within sniffing distance of customs might seem rude in other lands, but here every bite advertises product quality. One clerk sprinkles raw sugar and crushed pods into his tea, inhales the steam, and records another note. Example, brew, exceptional grade. You wonder if that'll show up as a line item on the invoice. Rain returns, a drizzle this time, releasing terpenes from wet leaves until the whole courtyard smells like a spa for overworked accounts receivable. Under a tiled awning, a senior tax assessor displays antique brass nose, trumpets flared. tubes once used to measure scent intensity by channeling Aroma past calibrated reeds. He invites you to try. The pod's vapor sings a high G-sharp through the reader tone associated with 8% duty. Misplay the note and tax jumps. Historians argue whether pitch actually correlates with volatile oil concentration or if officials enjoyed watching merchants hyperventilate on cue. Either way, you manage a respectable G natural, shaving a fraction off the levy dot. As ledger runners tally figures on palm sheets, thunder rumbles beyond the ridge. Storm runoff trickles down stone gutters, pooling around a stray sandal that somehow smells faintly of saffron. Flashback cameo from section 1. You grin, reminded that every step of this odyssey leaves a fragrant breadcrumb. Clerks seal each assessed sack with wax impressed by the kingdom's emblem, a stylized cardamom pod encircling a coin. One presses the seal onto your ribboned cargo. The wax smells faintly of beeswax and resin, almost frankincense like caicos of Persian nights. Layers on layers, spices stacking history the way scents stack in your memory. Joke number 3 pops when a junior clerk, nose reddened from too many sniffs, sneezes into the tariff wheel, sending bamboo pegs skittering. The senior assessor sighs. Another inflationary sneeze, and resets distances with the patience of a monk adjusting hourglasses. You silently thank the gods of accounting that your sacks were sealed a minute earlier. Dusk paints the courtyard smoky mauve. A final ledger tally declares your duty, paid calculated in silver phantoms, and 2 Aroma vouchers, redeemable for lodging up the road. Apparently, even taxes come with loyalty points here. Widely known fact number 2 slips into conversation. Cardamom ranked among the most tax-heavy commodities of medieval South India, rivaled only by pepper. Kingdoms financed palaces and wore elephants on pod-perfumed revenue. You glance at the fortified gatehouses, realize they literally smell like fiscal policy, with paperwork stamped. You follow a cobbled lane to a caravanserai perched above mist-filled valleys. Evening coolness tempers cardamoms zing into a mellow, almost chocolatey undertone. You breathe it in, feeling today's bureaucratic hustle unknot from your shoulders. Lanterns glow amber behind latticed windows. Inside, travelers sip sweet milk tea and compare nose fatigue like athletes swapping injury tales. You join them, raising your cuppet to carries a pod, floating like a tiny green canoe dot outside. A slow wind rustles bamboo, spreading diluted cardamom notes across the hillside. You taste them more than smell them now, a distant echo guiding dreams rather than commerce. You settle beneath a woven blanket, counting the soft clicks of bamboo joints swaying 1, 2, until rhythm drifts into half numbers, then none at all. Cardamom's cool warmth settles behind your ribs, the tally marks fade, and you coast into sleep on a gentle slope studded with emerald ribbons and whispering pods. You leave Cardamom's cool hills behind, sail the length of the Arabian Sea, hopscotch the Red Sea, and ride a fickle Mediterranean northward until one sunrise reveals the serrated skyline of Constantinople turrets, domes, and a rampart chain, floating over the Golden Horn like an iron crocodile. The moment your galley bumps Galata's dock, the air changes yet again. Salt and tar yield to ginger fiery, lemon fresh, slightly sweet, carrying enough zing to jolt any traveller out of Boijalag. It zips across the quay in warm bursts each time a porter cracks open a cask. By the third breath, your sinuses hum like a plucked harp-string, politely nudging you toward breakfast. The harbour road funnels into the mazy Constantinople's Grand Avenue, where every other doorway advertises itself with ginger, candied ribbons, hanging like festive eels, honey cakes stacked in towers, and copper samovars brewing tea so spicy the steam alone could polish brass. Your guide steers you into a large inn called the Crimson Griffin. Legend says the Crusaders named it after a mythical beast. Locals joke it's just an overcooked turkey. Either way, the courtyard bustles with caravanners unloading burlap. Sacks stamped Zingaiba Afasano, first order of business. A ginger palate cleanser to erase cardamom bureaucracy from your tongue. The innkeeper drops a sliver into your cup of thick Greek coffee. It pops and crackles like a firework, releasing citrusy heat that prickles your gums. Widely known historical fact, Byzantine physicians prescribed ginger to warm the stomach and combat what they called the sea wind chill, essentially early jet lag therapy for sailors. Marco Polo later noted the empire's fondness for ginger candy, claiming it kept sailors honest, though historians suspect he meant awake. You find a bench near a hearth, where merchants swap anecdotes faster than bards trade rhymes. One, draped in a fur-lined kaftan, pounds the table for silence and tells a favorite local legend during an 11th century siege. Emperor Alexios, I supposedly instructed defenders to lace their watchfires with cinnamon. Whenever the wind shifted, the sweet smoke drifted toward his tent, alerting him that siege towers were repositioning. Ginger merchants claim Alexios chewed candied ginger simultaneously to stay sharp through sleepless nights. Historians still debate whether any of this happened or if innkeepers invented it to sell overpriced snack trays. Either way, you nod appreciatively. It makes yesterday's tariff wheel seem almost sensible. Joke number 1 erupts when a sailor brags that he once navigated fog by sniffing ginger fumes blown off his galley's cookfire. Another retorts that if the cook had burned breakfast, they'd have followed the scent straight into a reef. The table roars, ale sloshes onto boots, and somewhere a jug band of spoons and tambourines tunes up for the night's revelry. Trading gets serious again when a duo of Venetian factors produce parchment centilages, the Mediterranean version of Genoa's nutmeg charts, but scaled for ginger potency, concentric circles. Not here. Instead, they plot voyage speed against root snap, a measure of how crisp a ginger rhizome breaks when bent. You test one, snap, clean as dry twigs. The factor aligns your sample with a scribble near Rhodes, concluding your cargo crossed the Aegean in record time. Maritime scratch hand sniff becomes snap hand sail. Curiosity gleams atop the hearth, a ceramic jar scored with vertical slats. The innkeeper lifts the lid to reveal glowing charcoal buried under ginger peelings. He claims inhaling the vapor soothes sore throats and wards off spy listening devices. No one eavesdrops when their sinuses burn, he quips. You take a tentative whiff. It feels like lightning kissed a lemon grove inside your skull. Joke number 2. You consider patenting ginger. Firewall for open office gossip deterrence. Afternoon fades into gold panel light slanting through latticed shutters. A scholar in ink-spattered robes entices you with a folio of siege diagrams annotated with spice notes, arrows showing wind currents, spots where ginger torches supposedly outsmarted enemy sappers by masking the scent of hot pitch. He insists Emperor Constantine XI relied on ginger fumes to signal tunnel breaches during 1453's final siege. Critics argue the city fell anyway, so perhaps the ginger forgot to fetch reinforcements. Historians still argue whether the notes are authentic or a later forgery commissioned to romanticize failure. You shrug victory or not. The story smells delightful. Dinner arrives. Kablitsia lamb stewed with garlic, onions, and a fistful of ginger slices. Each mouthful radiates warmth down your throat, settling in your chest like a miniature hearth. Pepper fog flashbacks surface. You remember Indus pilots pricing cargoes by sting. Here, innkeepers judge quality by the time it takes guests to break a sweat. You hit sheen at 5 spoonfuls. A serving girl dabs your brow, declares your portion trade grade, excellent, and stamps your clay bill with a tiny ginger root seal. Joke number 3 saunters over when a Varangian bard hulking, beard braided with silver wire, challenges patrons to a ginger grit contest. Rules: chew a raw chunk without blinking. He demolishes a thumb-sized piece, eyes watering but unblinking. You manage half a thumb before camel-level eye-rolling C-section 1 forces surrender. The guard chuckles and buys you a soothing milk and honey, spiked naturally with more ginger. Night deepens. Lanterns cast pools of amber across mosaic floors depicting dolphins chasing pomegranates. You step outside to the balcony where Bosphorus breezes mingled brine with ginger steam that drifts from kitchen vents. Below, torches flicker along seawalls. No cinnamon this time, but you imagine watchmen still sniffing wind shifts, echoing old legends. A last widely known fact hums in the dark. Constantinople sat astride Europe and Asia, taking a cut of every spice sack crossing its gates. Ginger tariffs alone financed sections of the Theodosian Wall's upkeep. You run fingertips along a stone, merlon cool, warm, faintly aromatic from centuries of cargo leaning in its shadow. Perhaps rock remembers scents better than mortals. You return to your cot in the loft, pulse humming with ginger's gentle burn. Through half-lidded eyes you trace memories: spice map, saffron, cinnamon, pepper, frankincense, clove, nutmeg, star anise, turmeric, cardamom, and now ginger 10 aromas, 10 coordinates guiding you across continents. Each still lingers somewhere. On your clothes, pepper in jacket seams, star anise in hair, turmeric on wrist thread, ginger warming your breath. You inhale slowly, counting heartbeats between far-off lute notes 1, 2, until they stretch, merge, dissolve, defended. By walls and scented histories, you drift asleep, ginger fire glowing behind your sternum, siege legends standing watch. Morning light, the color of warm apricot jam, slips over the stone ramparts of Aleppo as your caravan tips into Bob Alantakia Gate. Ginger still hums faintly in the back of your throat, but the city greets you with a very different overture. Layered aromas piling atop one another like velvet blankets. First comes sweet rose water, then sharp laurel soap, then a waft of smoky mastic resin, and finally a baseline of cumin that seems to rumble straight up through the paving stones. It's as if the streets themselves have been practicing harmony all night, ready to debut at dawn. You follow your guide down a narrow souk, where striped awnings trap the scent cocktail until it swirls around your ankles like perfumed mist. The apothecary quarter, Souk al-Dawain, hides just beyond a bend. Shops clustered beneath arches carved, with geometric stars. Each stall a pocket universe of smells carefully engineered to guide half-sleeping pilgrims straight to the cure they need. Your nose becomes both compass and ticket. Roseanne's saffron drift leads the lovesick toward heart tonics. Pungent garlic hand myrtle draws feverish travelers to cooling syrups. You pause at a threshold painted sage green. Without a word, the keeper slides open a cedar shutter, releasing a puff of mint-steeped steam that snaps your eyes wide. Keeps the morning fainting spells away, he says with a wink. Joke number 1. You suspect this city invented the original espresso Inhale. No cup required. A widely known historical fact slips in beside the shopkeeper's grin. Medieval Aleppo sat at a crossroads for caravans stretching from Cairo, Isfahan, and Constantinople, making its pharmacies legendary. Contemporary travelers, like Ibn Battuta, wrote of atomasters here who blended cures by melody of scent, calibrating illnesses the way musicians tune strings. You step inside, half expecting a lute accompaniment to your pulse. Shelves climb to the rafters, lined with glass jars that catch spears of sunlight and refract them into saffron, jade and topaz shards across the earthen floor. The keeper, call him Yusuf, pulls down a jar of dried damask rose petals, cracks the seal, and waves the lid so a subtle sweetness hovers near your nose without quite entering. Measure your breath, he instructs. You inhale, count for heartbeats before. The rose thins. He notes it on a walnut tablet. Patient baseliner, touch of road dust, otherwise sound. You're not sure whether to feel flattered or medically profiled. Yusuf moves to a stoppered flask filled with slivers of aloe soaked in honey. He cracks it, to this aroma heavier, almost smoky sweet. Fever bomb, he says. Too sharp for you today, I think. Historians still debate if such quick olfactory diagnostics truly distinguished between chills, melancholy, and heatstroke, or if apothecaries relied on practiced showmanship. Either way, the performance could win an award for immersive theatre. Curiosity twinkles behind Yusuf's counter, a thin wooden frame strung with silk threads, each dyed a different hue. Emerald, indigo, each thread infused with a unique scent. Pilgrims close their eyes, pluck a line as if playing harp, and follow whichever aroma springs free. Scent harp, Yusuf explains, helps the weary find their medicine even when lanterns fail. The gentlest vibration sends a puff of cloverton air your way. Suddenly you recall Baghdad's clove, labyrinth, and smile at the dacia vu. Joke number 2. Somewhere a modern GPS recalculates its self-esteem. Why USUF proposes a sniff test prescription. He layers 3 powders ground chamomile, cardamom, and a whisper of ginger left over on your breath into a paper cone, gives it a flick, and hands it over. You breathe through the narrow end. The blend unfurls cool, then warm, then cool again, like stepping in and out of sun-dappled shade. Balancing tonic for travelers who've crossed too many climates, he says, sealing a portion into a beeswax envelope stamped with a tiny anise star. You tuck it beside your turmeric thread and nutmeg chart, museum growing dot outside. Alleyways fork 6 different directions, but Yusuf insists you let your remedy guide the way. The packet leaks faint citrus ginger notes that drift backward on the breeze, steering you past tailors hammering brass studs into camel saddles and bakers fanning sesame rings. Whenever the scent wanes, you veer left. When it spikes, you hold course. Joke number 3. You realize you've become a spice-powered Roomba, bumping off walls until you find the charging dock of lunch. As it happens, materializes at Hammam al-Nahaysan, the coppersmith's bathhouse. Steam curls through lattice vents, carrying eucalyptus and bay leaf. Attendants rub weary merchants with olive oil soap laced predictably with Aleppo's signature laurel. You soak until limbs loosen like overcooked noodles. Then sip a Tizan Yusuf packed, noticing how chamomile tames ginger's bite just as promised. Widely known fact number 2 wafts in with rising steam. Centuries ago, Aleppo's soap makers exported laurel bars across the Mediterranean, making the city a cleansing capital long before spa influencers minted hashtags. Scented, Roots, it seems, fund both armies and aromatherapy. Refreshed, you meander toward the citadel, looming atop its limestone mound. Each breeze swirling down the ramp hints at black cumin roasted by street vendors. Yet your pocket's bomb eclipses even that, reminding you of Yusuf's instruction. Breathe slowly, sleep deeply. Dusk paints the fortress rose gold. Sparrows dive like arrows through crenellations. You climb a parapet, find a stone niche fragrant with old cedar dust, and watch caravan lanterns flicker into life beyond the Walsteiny constellations, mirroring the first stars overhead. As night settles, you pull the beeswax packet, break its seal, and inhale a final measured breath. Chamomile calm, cardamom cool, ginger warmth balanced as a three-note chord. You count heartbeats 1, 2, 3, for before the scent dissolves into the desert night. Satisfied, you close your eyes, letting memories spiral. Saffron flags, cinnamon altimeters, pepper fog, frankincense, wind charts, clove alleys, nutmeg latitudes, styrannis choirs, turmeric monsoon ledgers, cardamom tariff wheels, ginger siege. Songs are now Aleppo's remedy harp. Each fragrance a waypoint on your journey, each heartbeat another mile. Numbers stretch, gaps widen, and somewhere between 4 and 5, your thoughts fade into the hush of laurel-scented dreams. Moonlight gives way to grey-blue dawn as your caravan slips out of Aleppo's shadow, hugging a riverbed that snakes toward the lavender humps of the anti-Lebanon mountains. Cumin smoke and laurel soap linger on your cloak from last night's baths, but a new aroma ghosts ahead, sweet, almost animal, like warm leather left in sunshine, musk. The word itself seems to purr. Your guide says smugglers call it the shadow spice, too precious for open trade, too potent to stay hidden. One whiff can sell a cargo or condemn it, so they bottle it inside silk-lined flasks, thin as a monk's patience. By mid-morning, you leave the caravan road for a goat track wrapped in rock rose and thorn. Your only map is the wind. Each time the breeze thickens with that velvety scent, you veer toward it. When it fades, you skirt away, playing aromatic hot and cold across a patchwork of sun-baked terraces. Joke number 1. Any border guard watching would think you're reenacting a drunken bee dance. But really, you're just a nose with legs. A widely known historical fact trots alongside. Natural musk secreted from the Himalayan musk, deer-ranked among the medieval world's most expensive perfume ingredients, fetching more per gram than gold dust. Imperial courts hoarded it for incense, medicine, even diplomacy. Chinese annals record envoys bribed with a single sachet stitched in brocade. That price tag explains why smugglers risked frostbite, bandits, and poetry-spewing patrols to move. It Westot, your guide, produces one of the infamous flasks, hammered silver, interior padded with raw silk that drinks the musk oil like parchment soaks ink. He cracks the stopper. The scent spills out lush and heady, equal parts forest floor and cathedral incense. Instantly, every breeze seems to carry echoes of it, as though mountains have been hoarding the fragrance in secret caves. You mark the gust's angle, then tuck the flask deep inside your sash silk against silk, to avoid leaving a breadcrumb trail strong enough for rival thieves. Curiosity appears in the form of a parchment chart inked with wavy arrows. No towns or distances, only notes like Valley of Cedarwell, Gypsum Bend, Echo Gap. Each label marks a microclimate where wind funnels and scent linger smugglers. Waypoints invisible to anyone lacking a trained nose. Remember Baghdad's clove labyrinth? Think of this as a stealthier sequel. Fragrance not guiding commerce, but hiding it. Historians still debate whether such musk maps ever achieved cartographic precision, or if veteran runners simply memorized landmark smells. Juniper at one crest, goat pens at the next, and romanticized the system later. Either way, the parchment feels alive in your hands, pulsing with invisible arrows. You climb through a cleft where limestone walls brood, close enough to scrape saddlebags. Halfway, a downdraft bursts up from the gorge, thick with pine and Indus, the sweet dark musk again. Your guide nods. This is Gypsum Bend. He taps the map, then aims for a zigzag trail hidden behind a tusk-shaped boulder. Joke number 2. Your fitness tracker, if it survived the cinnamon altitude test back in the Palmiers, would label this workout cardio with aromatherapy surcharge. Sunlight flickers through cedar branches and lands in broken stripes on the path, lighting moths that flutter like scraps of parchment escaping sensors. The wind changes, musk thins, replaced by oregano from distant shepherd fires. Time to pause. Your guide uncorks the flask a finger width, wafting scent until it nudges the gust back like a shepherd dog herding sheep. Slowly, musk eclipses oregano. You reorient and march on, dodging goat droppings that steam in the cool air and add their own uninvited bass notes. High noon finds you on a saddle ridge where two valleys yawn open, one lush with olive groves, the other stark as bleached bone. According to the map, the lush valley hosts customs patrols searching for unsanctioned fragrances. The Bone Valley, meanwhile, channels winds that can carry musk 5 kilometers, undiluted. Decision made, you descend the stark slope, knees protesting. Each step loosens scree that rattles like dice against your boots. You recall cinnamon's altitude trick and wish for its sugary comfort, but musk is pure adrenaline, rich, urgent. A drum solo in your chest. Halfway down, you spot flat rocks arranged like crude altars. On each rests a shard of fired clay dabbed with hardened resin. Your guide grinzies are scent beacons. When sun heats the clay, the resin softens, emitting a faint mask scent juniper, myrtle or sheep tallow that cloaks musk trails from hounds. Joke number 3. Modern chemists would file that under mosquito nets. You crouch, sniff a sharp piney, faintly smoky, then move before the aroma imprints too deeply on your clothes. One signature at a time, please. In late afternoon, the ravine narrows into a wind tunnel. Here the smuggler's trick shines. They hang gauzy silken banners across the chasm, each soaked in diluted musk overnight. As wind whips through, the fabric oscillates, releasing perfume pulses that travel downslope like Morse code, warning accomplices miles away that cargo is coming or that danger follows. You spot 3 banners rippling overhead momentarily, eclipsing sun. Their scent hits you in waves, heady yet controlled, like cathedral incense timed between hymns. Historians still debate whether silk's electrostatic properties genuinely help disperse scent farther, or if smugglers preferred silk simply because it packed light and impressed buyers. Standing beneath those trembling flags, you're inclined to vote for both science and style. The valley floor opens at last, revealing a tumble-down caravanserai, camouflaged under mud plaster, streaked to mimic strata. Inside, a hidden loft shelters jars of musk, each wrapped in raw silk and sealed with wax stamped a 97. A code you later learn marks the year, region, and even the individual deer population. A primitive supply chain label centuries before barcodes. Widely known fact number 2 drifts in during the Abbasid era. Caliphs enforced musk monopolies, so strict that officials inspected borders with trained dogs not for contraband currency or silk, but for illegal perfume. Your nose tingles with new appreciation for its role as both passport and liability. Night drops quickly in the gorge. Lanterns glow through slitted windows, but no firewood burns outside smoke would betray the hideout. Instead, tiny terracotta lamps filled with rendered sheep fat flicker within, their odor chosen to blend with local herds. You sip lentil stew while the guide uncorks the flask one last time, adding a single silk thread to steep. The musk softens, the meal's earthiness, coaxing out a honey note you'd never noticed in humble legumes. Somewhere, saffron winks from section 1, jealous of the culinary cameo. Bellies warm, smugglers unroll bedrolls, stuffed with cedar shavings that mask human scent from patrol dogs. You nestle in, the valley's wind now reduced to a hush that strokes. Banners silk overhead like giant invisible harps. Remember the scent harp in Aleppo. This is its clandestine cousin, playing lullabies for outlaws. You count heartbeats between banner flutters, 1, 2, 3 on. Let musk's rich gravity anchor your thoughts. Numbers smear, the map's arrows fade, and you drift into sleep wrapped in silk-lined secrecy, guarded by perfumed breezes that know every hidden path home. You surface from musk-steeped dreams with first light glinting off the banners above, their silk now limp after a breathless night. Breakfast is silence and stale flatbread. The smugglers vanish like shadows, but a lone scrap of parchment waits by your bed. 3 symbols inked in saffron gold, a crescent, an eye, and a coiled line that could be a tongue or a serpent. Beneath them, a single word in Persian script, Kushbu. Your guide translates with a half smile. Fragrance. Then he nods toward the east, where a goat track threads through pistachio trees. The path carries you down from the secret valley and across a plain shimmering in morning heat. Musk fades behind you, replaced by an eclectic perfume swirling out of a sun-bleached courtyard ahead. Wood smoke laced with rose, a pulse of turmeric. Ghostly traces of frankincense all braided together like a half-remembered song, carved. Above the courtyard gate, the same crescented tongue triad. You've reached the enclave of the olfactory guild, a clandestine fellowship whispered about from Kashgar to Cadiz. Joke number 1. Membership requires 2 exceptional qualifications, decent nostrils, and the ability to keep them shut. Inside, cloaked figures move in measured choreography. Instead of greetings, they exchange discreet sniffs, tilting heads to note each other's aromatic calling cards. Note undertone here, clove high, note there. A bald master ushers you into a cool hall where incense coils trace lazy spirals to the rafters. He presses a beeswax tablet into your palm, already stamped with your spice resume: saffron, cinnamon, pepper, frankincense, clove, nutmeg, star, anise, turmeric, cardamom, ginger, musk 11 notches, each carved beside a miniature pictogram. You've walked the half circle, he murmurs. 2 lessons remain. At the hall's center stands a low table scattered with terracotta pots the size of sparrow eggs. Each pot bears a distinct glyph, a spiral, a ziggurat, a tiny stylized camel. The master lifts one, cracks the seal, and a breath of smoky lavender escapes. Rule 1, he intones. Pair every scent to a shape. Memory loves geometry. He teaches you the guild's mnemonic chant for beats of drums, then the whispered name, then a hand gesture sketching the glyph in air. Lavender spiral, cardamom, pepperthorn, You repeat until rhythm installs itself in muscle memory, your fingers doodling invisible sigils that the nose instantly decodes. A widely known historical fact materializes through the haze. Medieval pharmacists in Cordoba employed similar rhyming chants, called zagharid, to memorize compound formulas when parchment was scarce and secrecy priceless. Some of those verses survive in Judeo-Arabic manuscripts stored in dusty libraries. Others vanished when apprentices broke vows of silence for the promise of gold. Yet here, in this hidden courtyard, the tradition breathes. Curiosity perks as the master unveils the guild's treasure. A slim codex bound in teal goatskin, the original nosebook. Each page shows nothing but glyphs, no words. No numbers, yet trained members can read entire trade routes at a glance. A coiled line means musk cash. A half-sun denotes wind favorable to star anise exports. A broken square warns of pepper taxes, doubling at next full moon. You run a finger over the embossed symbols, feeling grooves like braille for the olfactory. Cortex. Historians still debate whether such cipher books truly circulated, or if later storytellers inflated a few cryptic recipe sheets into mythic espionage manuals. Holding one now, you lean toward myth verified. Lesson 2 begins. Encoding. New data. Apprentices bring mortar bowls filled with powdered myrrh. The master sprinkles crushed basil, then flicks a droplet of rosewater. Each additive represents fresh news bandits north of Damascus, drought-gripping Samarkand, surplus cinnamon in Salon. You chant the glyph sequence that matches the blend, pressing the symbol into a wax tablet. The chant fixes rumor to memory. Faster than ink dries, a sensory ledger immune to fire or censorship as long as your nose survives. Joke number 2. UPS could save on tracking numbers if every package came scented with GPS global perfume signal. After midday, sunlight slants through lattice skylights, painting moving mosaics across the floor. The guild serves lentils laced with cumin and a wink of mint flavors, subtle enough not to clobber nasal receptors. Conversation flows in low timbres. Laughter registers as tiny bursts of clove. You learn the courtyard's unwritten rules. Speak seldom, listen always, trust. No record you haven't smelled. Rumor claims guild members once foiled a plot to flood markets with fake saffron by staging a mistuned chant during a royal banquet. The discordant gesture signaled buyers to pull out, bankrupting counterfeiters overnight. Whether cloak-handigan or marketing genius, the story earns soft chuckles behind cumin steam. Evening practice turns to advanced countersense. The master passes around tiny vials of civet and ambergris, ordering you to neutralize their overwhelming funk with precise counter-note scoral jasmine, then green cardamom husk. Get the ratio wrong and the mixture slaps your nostrils like wet laundry. You nail it on the third try, earning a subtle nod. Joke number 3. One apprentice overdues the jasmine, creating a bouquet so cloying that pigeons evacuate the roof in protest. Emergency ventilation earns cheers and a new mnemonic. Too much bloom, doves leave room. With dusk draping the courtyard in lilac shade, the master offers the guild's final boon, a single blank page from the revered nosebook. For your own map, he says, slipping it inside a cedar slipcase alongside a stick of incense etched with the crescent-type tongue. Emblem. You tuck it next to the musk flask paper, waiting for future fragrances to sketch routes no quill could chart. Time to depart. Apprentices lead you through a side gate into a fig orchard where the air feels cool and forgiving. The master's parting whisper trails you. Remember, the mind forgets words before sense. You breathe deep. The orchard smells of green wood and ripening sugar. Heartbeats tick. 1 fig leaf, 2 sun-warmed bark, 3 faint echo of musk still. Caught in your scarf. Numbers smudge into twilight. As you walk toward the unseen coast, star points prick the sky in familiar constellations. You hum the lavender spiral chant under your breath, letting rhythm and aroma fuse until each step feels prescripted by scent. With every inhale, your internal atlas gains another contour line. Exhale, and worries drift away on fig-scented dusk. Counting heartbeats between distant owl calls 1, 2, 3. You fade towards sleepwalking, a pilgrim lulled by geometry and perfume, carrying a blank page, hungry for the final aroma that will complete the circle. The journey ends, strangely, at your own front door. You slide the key into the lock still dust-specked from anti-Lebanon scrayon, step into a kitchen that suddenly feels enormous, the way a childhood bedroom does after years away. Morning, light scatters through the window, landing on countertops littered with unopened mail and a lone mug that has developed philosophical stains. You drop your rucksack, and every jostled pouch exhales a faint gust of memory. Saffron's honey-gold sigh, pepper's mischievous snap, musk's velvet rumble. The room tilts just a little, as though the silk road itself has unrolled across the linoleum. Instinct nudges you toward the pantry. Cans and cereals glare like jealous cardboard. They've never seen the world. You ignore them, unlace the first drawstring, and spill cinnamon shards onto a plate. The air sweetens, thinner than Pamir mornings, but keen enough to conjure frost. On your cheek, you crumble a shard. Remember testing altitude by sugar notes. Joke number 1. You consider labeling your spice rack, now featuring elevation data. Next, a pinch of turmeric dust swirls into a glass bowl. Under your breath, you hum the monsoon, chant the Jadelin ledger that foretold rain in Calicutand. Watch dust settle like gold leaf on still water. A clap of thunder thumps your imagination. Outside, the neighborhood sprinkler clicks on. Close enough, cardamom pods rattle free, their cool perfume cutting late spring humidity. You crack one, 5 heartbeats of numbing lily mint, the tariff. Wheel echoing in your pulse. Bills still sit unpaid on the counter, but you smile, nobody here, taxes sent radius. Joke number 2. The revenue service would if they could, but they'd need better noses. You line jars along the backsplash in the order you first met them: saffron, cinnamon, pepper, frankincense, a single bead you're legally certain is for educational sniffing only, clove, nutmeg grated onto parchment, star anise pods, turmeric, thread, cardamom, ginger candy, musk flask, sealed tight, and a tiny vial of lavender myrrh powder from the olfactory guild. 11 coordinates like starlight. Bottled, 1 blank goatskin sheet waits beside the muir. Nosebook page, hungry for a domestic map. Time to cook. Olive oil warms in a pan. You scatter diced onions, which sizzle like distant caravan bells. A breath of ginger joins, bright as Constantinople dawn. You tip in tomatoes, then break saffron strands between finger and thumb until the crimson dissolves into sunset orange. Widely known historical fact: medieval Valencian sailors carried saffron to sea believing it guarded against scurvy and homesickness. A dual purpose, vitamin and postcard. You stir, thinking the remedy still works your chest. Loosens with something like gratitude. Curiosity calls from the fridge, a forgotten wedge of manchego. You shave it atop the simmering sauce, then why not grate nutmeg over the cheese? The scent combination is outrageous, like hosting a Genoese clerk and a Chinese dock worker at the same dinner party. Historians still debate whether nutmeg ever flavored European cheeses before the Dutch monopolies, but your skillet doesn't care for licensing agreements. You slice bread, rub it with clove-tinged garlic oil remembered from Baghdad alleyways. Toast pops. Pepper grinder crackles thunderously lightning for breakfast. Joke number 3. Your smoke detector raises a feeble beep, perhaps registering aroma overload. You reassure it that frankincense is optional. Lunch begins standing at the stove, spoon hovering. You taste sweet, fiery, floral. Earth every league you traveled condensed into one bite that tingles gums like Aleppo's trichord remedy. The spices don't compete. They tell stories in rounds, one voice fading as another rises. You chew slowly, letting saffron's dusk yield to cinnamon dawn. Pepper noon, ginger afternoon, musk twilight hiding in the bass notes. Somewhere between spoonfuls, the room changes size again, now vast, now intimate. The countertop edge becomes Kashgar's gate. Steam curling from the pan seems to scribe frankincense spirals against the ceiling. You realize kitchens are perfect caravanserais. Travelers drop ingredients, trade heat for aroma, leave rich. Then they arrived. You reach for the blank goatskin, dip a pastry brush in saffron broth, and paint a quick crescenture, first glyph, then a tiny spiral for lavender myrrh, a single dot for pepper fog. Shapes bloom across the page, drying into faint amber mnemonic stains. Map making, but inward. No empire can ban this atlas. No patrol dog can seize it. The meal done, you set the spoon aside. The house is silent except for a ceiling fan humming a soft Guangzhou work song rhythm. You hear yourself breathing, count beats 1, 2, 3 spice after scents hovering like kindly ghosts. The journey has folded itself into cupboards and corners, quietly confident it can guide you again whenever you open a jar. You close your eyes a moment and feel the map pulse behind your eyelids. An unbroken loop from Kashgar to kitchen, measured not in miles, but in inhalations. Somewhere, a camel eye rolls in approval. Asterisk, the hard-packed roads are behind you now. Let the air settle, soft and slow, filling the room the way moonlight pools in a calm bay. Inhale once, gently. A ribbon of saffron drifts upward, barely there, warm as candle glow. Exhale longer than you breathed in, and feel shoulders sink, safe under weightless blankets. Let cinnamon wander forward, next sweet bark, hint of lullaby. The mind in quiet spice, the edges of thought blur. Even pepper's lively spark dims to a friendly ember, glowing far off, promising vigilance while you rest. Frankincense fogs the background like pale clouds above a still desert. Clove and nutmeg chimes softer than distant bells, marking time without urgency. Hear cardamom's cool whisper smoothing every crease of worry, ginger's gentle heat loosening the last knotted muscle. Musk hovers, lowest, deep and steady, steady as heartbeat, heartbeat as tide. Imagine one slow caravan crossing a night meadow beneath silver constellations, camel step lighter than the previous, each lantern swinging. Lower, lower, until flame meets reflection in a pool of perfect dark water. Stars mirror torchlight. Torchlight mirrors stars. Horizon and sky stitch themselves together, seamless as sleep. You stand between them for one final moment, then step forward, weightless, onto that reflection, supported, serene. Nothing pursues you here. The maps are folded, provisions stored, gates closed. Only calm remains, fragrant and familiar, guiding you toward dreams where every road is soft sand and every breeze a lullaby in the language of spice. Drift, traveler, the journey will wait.